Tonight, international condemnation as Israel strikes at the heart of Syria, hitting the Ministry of Defense. Israel says it is defending the Druze religious minority in Syria's south. The United States tells Israel to stop the attacks. In Gaza, at least 20 people are killed in a crowd crush at an aid distribution site. As violence flares across the Middle East, we have an extended report from inside Iran following Israel's 12-day war. Coming up, we speak to the former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, also tonight. An Afghan interpreter who worked for the British Army tells Sky News his father died as a result of a data breach which exposed the names of those who worked with UK forces. Plus, we'll hear from the British man swimming 1,000 miles around the coast of Iceland about how he's braving freezing temperatures and even killer whales in the name of science. Hello there, good evening and welcome to the programme. We start with a major escalation in the Middle East where Israel has carried out powerful airstrikes on the Syrian capital, Damascus. Israel says it's taking action to protect the Druze minority group, which also has a large population in Israel, following clashes in the southern Syrian city of Sueda. Well, the attack targeted Syria's Ministry of Defense, with another hitting near the presidential palace. Clashes between Syrian troops and Druze armed groups have flared for days, with Israel launching dozens of strikes on government forces and threatening to escalate its attacks to protect the religious minority. Well, the US is calling for an end to the fighting, saying all parties must step back. In Gaza, where ceasefire talks appear to be stalling, at least 20 people have been killed in a crowd crush at an aid distribution site. We'll report on the latest mass casualty event inside Gaza shortly. But first, here's our international editor, Dominic Wycorn, on the escalation of Israeli attacks on Syria.
Mid-afternoon in Damascus. Its most famous square violated and bombarded by Israeli air power. The moment again, as live news cameras roll. A few weeks ago, Tehran, now Damascus. Months after liberation from decades of tyranny, Syrians now have this to worry about: Israeli airstrikes in the heart of their capital. As a way of showing who's the region's biggest military power, it is hard to beat. But the massive escalation is awkward for Israel's allies. President Trump has said Syria's new government should be given a chance. Now it's under attack, and his diplomats are struggling to keep up.
These are historic, long-time rivalries between different groups in the south-west of Syria, Bedouins, the Druze community, and it led to an unfortunate situation and a misunderstanding, it looks like, between the Israeli side and the Syrian side. So we've been engaged with them all morning long and all night long with both sides, and we think we're on our way towards a real de-escalation.
Misunderstanding is an understatement. Tensions in southern Syria erupted in recent days. Its Druze minority clashing with Bedouin and Syrian government forces, dispatched to restore calm, but accused of carrying out atrocities. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insists his forces are acting to protect the Druze.
The IDF is working. The Air Force is working. Other forces are working. We are working to save our Druze brothers and to eliminate the regime's gangs. And now I have one request from you. You are citizens of Israel. Do not cross the border.
But critics say this is more about Israel creating a buffer zone and seizing a chunk of territory. Israel has moved forces from the Golan Heights, Syrian territory it's occupied since the 60s, into Syria proper. And it is now having trouble controlling that border. Druze are fleeing across from Syria, but also from Israel into Syria to help defend their own.
I have especially a big family there, that they suffer a lot there. They have been killed, and it's hard for us to stand here, not doing anything.
Since the fall of the Assad regime, southern Syria has been a powder keg of rivaling factions. It's now erupted into open conflict that in just the last few days has claimed hundreds of lives. If diplomacy fails to secure a ceasefire and Israel fails to control its border, there's the potential for this to become much worse. Dominic Waghorn, Sky News.
And we'll have more from Dominic later in the programme with an extended report from inside Iran, where he was one of the few international correspondents permitted to enter the country following the conflict with Israel. Well, in Gaza, at least 20 people have been killed at an aid site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. The organisation, backed by Israel and the United States, has 4 sites across Gaza, 1 close to Gaza City and 3 in the south of the Strip. It was near the site in Khan Yunis where this latest incident happened. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation said most of those who died were trampled to death in a surge of people, which it blamed on agitators in the crowd. It comes after the organisation began using a new flag system to indicate whether a site is closed or not, and follows a series of deadly incidents at its sites. Well, analysis by Sky's data and forensics team has found that the daily casualties toll in Gaza increases when the aid hubs are open. The UN says 875 people have been killed in Gaza while trying to get food, 674 of them dying in the vicinity of Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites. Well, Sky's Lisa Holland is following events from Jerusalem and a warning. Her report does contain images of some of those who died.
We've blurred his face, but the family of this boy killed in southern Gaza trying to get food say he was just 13 years old. At the Nasser hospital, a truck pulls up. They're hoping to save the lives of some of those caught up in the crush at a nearby aid distribution centre where people had gone in desperate need of something to eat.
My children haven't eaten for 4 days. I have 3 children. I went to get flour for my children. Why are we being killed so we can feed our children? I went there. It was terrible.
Row after row of people who didn't make it. Gaza's health ministry claims people died of suffocation when pepper spray was used and shots were fired at the crowd.
They kept us in one place and they used pepper spray against us. It's burned our eyes. People were choking and pushing each other. People were suffocating. It wasn't Israelis. It was the American doing this. We went there because we need food. We want to live. We have nothing left. That's why we went there.
The Israeli and American-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which runs the aid sites, gave a different version of events. In a statement, it said, the incident and consequential fatalities were the result of a surge instigated by armed Hamas agitators who infiltrated the crowd. At no point was tear gas deployed, nor were shots fired into the crowd. Limited use of pepper spray was deployed only to safeguard additional loss of life. But just this week, the GHF, facing intense criticism over its management of aid, introduced a new red and green flag system designed to inform Gazans when they should turn up. A video from the past few days at another aid site nearby shows what appears to be shots pinging off the sand as people crowd together waiting for food. The UN says more than 800 people have died since the GHF began running aid distribution in Gaza in May. Which means the grief continues in the absence of any resolution of ceasefire talks. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Well, the US has mediated talks for a ceasefire in Gaza and is now pushing to de-escalate the fighting in Syria following those Israeli airstrikes. Let's bring in our US correspondent Mark Stone, who joins us live from Washington. And Mark, Donald Trump is meeting leaders from the region today there, just as the US is involved in not one but 2 negotiations now to end conflicts in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor in Dominic's report, the first report you played, where he described it. He kind of tried to downplay things, described it as a misunderstanding that had resulted in these extraordinary images coming out of Damascus of Israeli airstrikes. I think it is clear that behind the scenes, the Americans are irritated, to say the least, about this, and are trying to tell the Israelis this is not the moment to be doing this. Don't forget that Ahmed al-Shara, the Syrian president, is a man who just a few months ago met Donald Trump on his trip to the Middle East in Riyadh. That was an extraordinary moment. The Americans, the Trump administration, is really genuinely trying to normalize its own relationship with Syria since the fall of Bashar al-Assad. And they were doing quite well. And we've seen that the new Syrian president, he's been to Europe as well. He went to the Elysee Palace, he met Emmanuel Macron. And so they clearly have an internal problem in Syria with the Druze. There's no question about that. But what the Americans don't want is the Israelis to get involved, because it just complicates everything. And so behind the scenes, there is clearly an attempt to tell Netanyahu, not now, absolutely not. But the bigger picture, as you say, is Gaza. They're still trying to get a ceasefire there. We thought it would be last week when Netanyahu was in Washington. It never happened. I can tell you that on that, there is a new proposal that's been put forward by the Israelis. It was put forward a couple of days ago. We reported it then. It's about the positioning of the Israeli military inside Gaza during any 60-day ceasefire. We're waiting now for Hamas to see what they think about that proposal. But it's an almighty mess, and it appears that it is getting more and more complicated. And interestingly, Anna, into this comes the news today that the Qatari Prime Minister is in Washington tonight for a private dinner with Donald Trump. I'm told that he is flying in specifically for the dinner and flying out again straight afterwards. There's no media, there's no public event. That is really very interesting. We know that the Qataris are central in terms of the bridge, trying to bring the two sides together in Gaza to find some form of peace there. So the fact that the Qatari Prime Minister is in Washington tonight is an important development. Whether or not it brings any sort of breakthrough either on Gaza or on the new Syria challenge, we will see. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes, and the Trump administration is desperate to try and broker a peace, to try and, if it's a game of whack-a-mole, to try and keep them all down. It's really tricky at the moment.
Yes, feels like a complex picture emerging, doesn't it, Mark? Thank you very much indeed for that live in Washington for us. Well, a little earlier this evening, I spoke to the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert about the situation in Gaza and began by asking for his reflections on that incident today where at least 20 people were killed at an aid distribution site.
This is something I don't know exactly what happened and who is responsible for it. I just feel that it is simply incumbent upon the Israeli government and the Israeli army to make sure that there will be a humanitarian supply in the most effective manner, and that people will not have to fight and to die in order to get the humanitarian supplies. It's as simple as that.
So is this sustainable from your point of view? We know that Gaza hospitals have already said that they're overwhelmed with gunshot injuries. Now we've added a crush incident and suffocation, it seems, is what the hospitals are reporting. 875 people have died since May seeking food, 674 of them around the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution sites. So what needs to happen, do you think, to stop people dying seeking food?
Well, I think we have to be careful before we have any final judgment about who caused what, regardless of who is responsible for what. I think, and I said it, we can't eat the cake and have it. Either if we are in control of Gaza, then we have to make sure that the humanitarian needs will be provided in the most effective and secured manner. That's as simple as that.
Are you saying this is not an effective manner? I mean, the number of distribution sites has gone from 400 down to 4, all in the south. People have to travel too far. They're being funneled now, aren't they? There's flag systems, there's razor wire to get people to the point where they need food.
I just know one thing. We are in control of Gaza. And so we have to make sure that we take all the necessary measures in order to make it effective and secured for all those who need the humanitarian supplies. And if it doesn't happen, we have to ask ourselves how come it doesn't happen. And I'm afraid that we don't have good answers.
We know that the mechanism to distribute aid is part of the ceasefire negotiations that are still underway. Would you be, grateful to see the United Nations back in charge, whatever the Israeli government thinks about UNRWA and how it behaves in Gaza, and how Hamas, they suggest, stole some of the food?
I'm quite, I'd be very careful before I suggest that the United Nations will take over, because I'm not sure that the United Nations has the capacity at this point and the means and the manpower to make it effective. I don't know. I just don't know, and I don't think that anyone knows exactly what's going on there. I just know one thing, that in as much as we are in control of Gaza, this is our responsibility. We have to make sure that it will happen. We have to find a solution. We have the army, we have the soldiers, we have the presence there, and it's our responsibility. It's as simple as that.
Well, one solution that has been proffered about housing people in Gaza is this idea of a humanitarian city in the south again. To be fair, large parts of Gaza are deeply uninhabitable. What is your view of that idea?
Well, I'm absolutely appalled by the idea. It didn't happen yet. But the idea that we should deport hundreds of thousands of people all the way from the north to the south and create a segregated camp that will be walled from all sides without allowing people to just have a freedom of movement, it is totally unacceptable and unbearable. And there is a strong opposition to it in the state of Israel. I think the army is against it, and I heard the legal experts that say that this amounts to a crime against humanity if we do it. So we shouldn't do it. We shouldn't stretch this into a position where it is indefensible. Simple as that.
So why then? Is it because people are being concentrated in a small area? What happens, therefore, in that plan to the rest of Gaza? And what are we witnessing here? What is the end game for the Israeli government?
Yes, you know the answer very well. You know that there are some ministers in the Israeli cabinet, unfortunately. I'm ashamed of it. There are some ministers in the Israeli cabinet that explicitly say that we should clear Gaza from the Palestinians living there to the extent that possible in order to prepare the empty areas for resettling of Jews there. I mean, this is what Ben-Gvir says, this is what Smotrich says, and they say it in the most public way without any hesitations. Unfortunately, I don't hear that the Israeli Prime Minister or the Minister of Defense say something different. So, yeah, I mean, if there is a fear, there is a legitimate fear that the strategy behind it is to clear this area in the north for the permanent occupation of Israel, which is, I think, is against the security, the national and the moral values of what should be the moral values of the State of Israel.
And in your view, just briefly, do you think that that ultimately will happen? Israel will permanently take the north of the Gaza Strip?
I'm afraid. I don't know. I hope it will not happen. But if there is a genuine fear, yes, there is a fear that this is what they are up for. They say it. When a minister in a very important position, the national security minister in the state of Israel, says that this is what we need to do, and then there is this plan of moving and deporting people from the north to the south to a segregated camp that will be controlled from all sides, and that the areas will be cleared from in the north part, that this is part of the strategy. And as I said, I think that the majority of Israelis are totally appalled and are against it. And they think that it brings Israel into a very low position that we shouldn't be there.
Ehud Olmert, we much appreciate your time. Thank you. Well, you're watching The World. Still to come, an Afghan interpreter tells Sky News his father was killed by the Taliban because of the data breach which exposed the names of those who worked with UK forces.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Stephen Murphy and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland.
An Afghan interpreter who worked for the British Army has told Sky News that he believes his father was killed due to the huge data breach which exposed the names of those who worked with UK forces. Personal details of almost 19,000 Afghans were mistakenly released more than 3 years ago, and successive governments have used a super injunction to keep the incident and its consequences under wraps until now. Well, nearly 7,000 Afghan nationals are being relocated to the UK as a result of the breach at the cost of millions of pounds. Sky's Adele Robinson has more.
I was working as an interpreter with the British Army in Afghanistan. Interpreter was on the first target for the Taliban, and the Taliban call us the British eyes.
Brought to the UK for his protection, Ali, not his real name, thought his family was safe until his data was leaked.
I have carried a dead body of the British soldier. I feel betrayed by the British government.
He believes his father was killed because of it.
My father has been died because of the Taliban take him to the custody and beat him. That's why he died.
Ali's relatives are now hiding in Afghanistan, fearing for their lives.
Every day, every single minute, my family is waiting for their deaths because if anyone comes to knock the door, they think that is the Taliban.
He's among thousands of Afghans who helped the British military, whose names we now know were exposed 3 years ago. After his siblings were arrested, Ali raised concerns to the Ministry of Defence over his data in this email last year. "I am terrified," he said, "and I beg you do not pass this information to anyone."
They say nothing. They just ignore what I told him, and they never reply me back to this email.
Then, on Tuesday, the day a super injunction was lifted by the High Court, this confirmation his data had been leaked. The Ministry of Defence is yet to respond to Sky News, while the Prime Minister insists there will be scrutiny.
The Defence Secretary set out the full extent of the failings that we inherited. A major data breach, a super injunction, a secret route that has already cost hundreds of millions of pounds. Ministers who served under the party opposite have serious questions to answer about how this was ever allowed to happen.
With thousands more Afghans being brought to the UK as a result of the breach, there's concern over whether it will create tension in communities like Bracknell, where hundreds arrived at this hotel earlier this year.
These are people who risk their lives for British values. And what's more, those who have been supported on this scheme are given support to integrate into life in the UK. So, look, I do understand why people raise legitimate questions. That's right and proper that they do that. And it's important that we answer those questions transparently. And that's why it's so important that we've got clarity on this secret Tory scheme.
Clarity, but a government secret it's feared that may erode public confidence. Ali's tried and failed, meanwhile, to get his family to the UK. And if legal action doesn't work, he says he'll go back to Afghanistan and give himself up. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Well, this is The World. Next up, we'll have a special report from our international affairs editor on how Iran and its people were affected by the recent Israeli and American missile attacks. That to come.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has today claimed that Tehran was capable of delivering a bigger blow to its adversaries than what it fired during its 12-day war with Israel. Iran is under pressure to resume nuclear talks with the United States, and Washington has set the end of August as the new deadline for a deal. Well, following the attacks on Iran by Israel and the US, there's been speculation about the impact of the missile strikes, which targeted the country's nuclear facilities. Our international affairs editor, Dominic Warkon, is one of very few international correspondents who was permitted to enter Iran to see for himself where the bombs fell, speak to ordinary Iranians and draw back the veil from inside the Islamic Republic. We'll speak to him about the experience in a moment, but first, this is his special report.
For 12 days, Israel, then America, bombed Iran. Their goal to destroy its nuclear program. The biggest war on Iran since the 80s. Iran struck back, firing on targets in Israel.
From British television.
We've been given rare access in the days after that conflict. We've been brought to one of the most secret places in Iran. Do not worry about Donald Trump.
No, we don't worry about it.
A chance to witness its aftermath. We're driving through Iran in the east of the country, and we're among a handful of journalists allowed in at the moment. We're here to try and find out what this country does next, where it goes from here in the wake of this devastating but short-lived war with Israel. We had to fly into Mashhad, which is right out on the border, towards the border with Afghanistan, because they're not letting flights into the west of Iran at the moment in the wake of that air campaign. And as we flew in, we saw a lot of civilian airliners kind of lined up on the tarmac. The Iranians clearly moving a lot of their planes as far as they can out of harm's way because of the Israeli attacks that are now over. It took 16 hours in the end to reach Tehran. First impressions as we enter the city, it's a lot quieter. The roads more empty and freer of traffic than the last time we were here. Many of those who fled the war have clearly still not returned. The next day, there are more obvious signs of the conflict. Huge posters shroud buildings honouring the commanders and nuclear scientists assassinated by Israel. Black ribbons on lampposts. Iran is still mourning its dead, many of them civilians. And the scars of Israel's aerial onslaught are not hard to find. Residential buildings in civilian areas like this, hit by an airstrike like so many across Tehran. Israelis may have been trying to kill a nuclear scientist here. It's not clear, but there's no doubt about the extent of the damage they did. The Israelis talk about precision targeting a lot, but this is the reality of their airstrikes. This missile has come in here and devastated this floor, but the floors above and below, and right over there, a couple of buildings away, it's blasted in the windows and ripped off the cladding. As you can see, the explosion has just torn a hole right the way through the floor here and the floors below down to the ground floor. An engineer we've spoken to just now says the entire structure will probably have to be torn down and built again. Residents won't talk on camera, but tell us they're devastated by the loss of their homes. Over the street, they're replacing the windows and counting themselves lucky they weren't here when the airstrike came in.
If she had been here, which she is most of the time, even with her child, I think the damage wouldn't have been replaceable.
The fear of this all-out war between Iran and Israel, sworn enemies, has been ever present for decades, but averted until now. When we spoke to the country's foreign minister in January, he wouldn't even imagine Israel attacking his country because, he said, Iran would hit back so hard.
Any attack to our nuclear facilities would be faced with an immediate and decisive response. But I don't think they will do that crazy thing. This is really crazy.
That confidence has, in the end, proven misplaced. Iran's nuclear program has been deeply controversial for decades. It says it's for civilian and peaceful purposes, but no other country's enriched uranium to levels Iran has for anything but military reasons. Israel, the US and other Western nations say it is trying to build the bomb. But Iran had been engaged in diplomacy with the Americans, on the verge of another round of talks when the Israelis launched their surprise attacks. There was outrage still at the Iranian Foreign Ministry when we went there this time. We were showing pictures of Israel's civilian victims, among the dead, women and children. Iran's chief foreign spokesman condemned its enemies for their deaths.
You Londoners or you Brits, you have your own blitz. And I think what happened for 12 long days was a kind of unprovoked surprise aggression against Iranians. They killed many Iranians. Close to 1,000 people lost their lives in this vicious act of war that was imposed on our nation.
Despite all that, though, he revealed Iran is exploring talking to the Americans again.
The current situation, I know there are contacts indirectly. My minister is talking to Oman, Qatar, and others. So, as I said, diplomacy never ends.
Iran is keen to show the world that Israel didn't just hit military and nuclear sites, but deliberately, it says, targeted civilian people and places in what it says were war crimes. We're heading for one of the Israelis' most controversial targets during its air campaign. On the slopes overlooking northern Tehran, a place that is normally completely off limits. We've been brought to one of the most secret places in Iran, a place that you would never be allowed to film, and normally, as you can see up there, signs saying no photo above this guard position, because these are the gates to the notorious Evin prison. For decades, political prisoners and foreign nationals have been among those held in this jail. It is quite extraordinary being in this place, somewhere where foreign journalists are never normally allowed to venture. Even the Iranian government's fiercest critics, though, have condemned Israel for attacking this jail. The strikes came in at midday when this visitors centre was full. Among the almost 80 killed, inmates and their visiting relatives, including a 5-year-old girl, local residents and prison staff. As many as 8 missiles were used to hit the complex. They have breached the outer security perimeter of the jail compound in at least 2 places, the gate and also here outside what we're told is the visitor centre. But the jail itself up there on the hill remains intact. More devastation at the prison hospital, where the missile shockwaves blasted in the windows on every floor. In room after room, medical equipment and beds destroyed.
This is one of the most important dates in the Shiite Islamic calendar. It's called Ashura. It's when Shiite Muslims reflect on the importance of resistance against betrayal and injustice. Clearly themes that they are feeling particularly relevant at the moment, given what they're going through. So we've come to one of the biggest mosques in Tehran to gauge the mood ahead of that Ashura festival.
This was a reminder of the strength of religious fervour in Iran, the source of so much of the government's support and power here, something those who hoped they could topple the leadership consistently underestimate. Like Ali, who'd come here to pray with his young son Janyar, at times like these, many Iranians seek protection in their faith from foreign threats.
نگران هستیم ولی خب برای وطنمون هستیم تو این فضاها بیشتر. دوست نداریم که کسی دیگه‌ای تصمیم بگیره یا امثال اسرائیل بخوان این کشور رو تهدید بکنن. نمیشه که بقیه رو مجبور کنیم. این معنیش دموکراسی نیست.
That fervour is at its strongest at this time of year. They march as they have for almost 14 centuries, with ritual flagellation and mournful chants.
They are remembering the death of a religious leader 1,400 years ago, but his story, one of betrayal and deception at the hands of his enemies, could not be more relevant, they believe, to Iran today.
Their ancient ceremony recalls the betrayal and martyrdom of Imam Hussein in the 7th century, remembered by the devout as if it happened yesterday. The age-old virtue they celebrate, resistance against oppression, resonates powerfully today in the wake of the war. Among worshippers, there was a renewed sense of defiance against their enemies.
What do you think of Donald Trump?
About Trump?
What do you think?
I don't think about Trump. Nobody likes him. He always wants to attack too many countries.
Can Iran make peace with him, though, do you think? Is it possible for peace between Iran?
So, I love peace.
Do not worry about Donald Trump?
No, we don't worry about it.
Why not?
But?
Why not?
Because we don't want to screw up him. He can do any work that they want. We stay here. This country is for us. Nobody can force us to live here.
Billboards nearby draw a line between Imam Hussein's story and current events and highlight the many women and children Iran says died at the hands of their enemy. Under the blood-red flag of martyrs, they beat their chests. The crowd weeps with grief as the story of Imam Hussein is retold today. As he was betrayed by his enemies, Iran is victim to the treachery of America and the aggression of Israel, we're told. And many Iranians say they are being brought closer together by that trauma. Ashura and its fortifying message has come at just the right time for Iran's embattled government. No surprise then that the country's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, chose this moment to reappear in public for the first time since Israel's attacks began. The faithful rose with ecstatic cheers and sheer victory chants after 3 weeks of Israeli and American death threats had kept him in hiding. Supporters we spoke to later welcomed his return.
یعنی از شدت خوشحالی نمیدونستم با خودم چیکار کنم و این باعث شد که اون دشمنان بزرگ مثل آمریکا و اسرائیل تو دهنی خیلی محکم بخورن.
حضورش توی تلویزیون توی یه مراسمی مثل مراسم عزاداری عاشورا تاسوعا نشون داد که تمام صحبتایی که میکنن راجع به مخفی شدنش و ترسیدنش و اینی که میخوان سمت صلح و اینا برن با
The Khamenei government has been challenged in recent years with massive unrest led by the country's women and brutally suppressed by his security forces and by massive economic problems. But it's never faced anything quite like the recent war. Where does it go from here? We spoke to one analyst with close ties to Iran's leadership. He says Iran remains very much on a war footing.
The Iranian government and the army are prepared for a new round of conflict because they think that the other party, specifically Israel, could not be trusted in terms of any ceasefire.
What struck us most here is that the hopes that the Iranian leadership could have been toppled swiftly by this war appear to have been wildly optimistic. Yes, many Iranians do not like their government, not least because it's failed to defend them adequately in the last few weeks, but equally they don't want to be told what to do by foreign powers, particularly their two biggest sworn enemies, and they really fear the chaos that could have followed. There's no doubt the Iranian leadership is in a massive bind and massively weakened by what it's been through. Does it now go all out to build the bomb in secret? And if it does, can anyone stop them? I think the jury is out on both those questions. Or does it pursue a deal with the Trump administration? Making diplomatic progress is even more challenging now. Trusting the Americans will be even harder for the Iranians now they've been attacked by them. Defiance while leaving the door open to diplomacy seems the order of the day. And a long-running war seems more than likely as Iran keeps the world guessing and Israel tries to keep it in check.
Well, Dominic joins me here now. Dominic, this was so seismic for the country. You, one of the few journalists who managed to get into Iran. So what was the mood there then as people reflected on what had happened?
It was seismic. I think it was what a lot of people had expected for a long time. But when it actually happened to the Iranians, they were in a state of deep shock. And that's what we found. We got there just a few days after the 12-day war came to an end. And I think there was a shift in the mood from what we found initially to what we sort of found after our 5 or 6 days there. It was a real sense of shock, of subdued, deep concern. And I think then as people started coming back, a lot of them had evacuated, of course, because these airstrikes were striking in all sorts of areas. They couldn't really predict what was going to be hit next. But as they were coming back, I think that shifted to more one of a sense of anger about both the Israelis and the Americans, but also their own government for not doing more to defend them. But also there was a sense of defiance, because we were there also during the Ashura festival. That's a Shia festival that celebrates and remembers the sacrifices and the virtue is one of sort of triumph and resistance over adversity. And they dwell on the themes of betrayal as well. And I think for the Iranians, they feel the Americans in particular have betrayed them in this. So there was a sense of defiance I think the government was beginning to tap into as well. So it went from a sense of just not knowing what had hit them to coming to terms with it and then getting pretty angry about it and hoping their government can do something, I think diplomatically, most Iranians hope, to end this threat now, which they now feel hangs in the air, literally above them from the threat of Israeli warplanes coming back, which I don't think they feel that threat is in any way over.
There has been much debate about the extent of the damage to Iran's nuclear programme. Are we any closer to understanding that?
Well, you have to hear what the Iranians are saying, what the Americans are saying. The Iranians are saying, yes, the foreign ministry spokesperson we spoke to there said it was seriously damaged, and Donald Trump has said that their nuclear programme was obliterated. It wasn't obliterated, because to obliterate is to sort of smash to smithereens. And the thing about the enriched uranium in particular is that is packed into rods that can withstand all kinds of accidents. So it could well be still under the mountain of Fordo, or it may have been taken out of there. The IAEA seems to think that around 400 kilograms of enriched uranium was taken away and is somewhere at large in Iran.
Well, the Americans have started laying down deadlines again. So does the Iranian government have a future? And what does it do now?
It's interesting because if you talk to the Iranians, and they won't go on camera to say this, but there is clearly a lack of support for the Iranian government. On camera, many of them, there are many supporters, and they're very patriotic and they're very defiant in the wake of what's happened. They don't like their government, many of them, because of the economic mismanagement, because of the brutal suppression of the protests led by many of the women of Iran that were crushed so brutally and ruthlessly. But equally, they don't want to be told what to do by outside powers, particularly those powers they have regarded as sort of historic enemies. And so they're kind of caught in a dilemma. But if you talk to them off camera, some like when the Ayatollah Khamenei reappeared after weeks in hiding, we said to one guy, how do you feel about seeing him again? And he said, not good. He's part of the problem. And I said, well, why? And he said, well, we all know why. But he wouldn't say any more than that. Another person who'd seen a neighbour's flat destroyed by the Israeli airstrikes, I said, do you hate the Israelis for this? And she said, I've got mixed feelings. So she wouldn't say, on the one hand, that she wouldn't condemn the Israelis, and she wouldn't support a government either. So there are those mixed feelings there. And I think in public, they support the government, and I think the government's pretty safe for the time being. But I think longer term, the government the leadership is in deeper trouble, philosophically, ideologically, because it's effectively failed. As I say, its kind of central rationale has been massively undermined. So, I think it's going to need to reform, it's going to need to evolve. There's no sign of that at the moment. If it remains sort of brittle and unchanging, it could face a very uncertain future.
Dominic, truly fascinating reporting. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, this is The World. Next up, encounters with killer whales, salt tongue and chafing. An extreme swimmer describes the impact on his body as he attempts to swim around Iceland.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash.
Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes. Sky News, the full story first. I'm Greg Milam and I'm Sky's Chief North of England correspondent.
This is insane. This was a bustling residential area.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How difficult is this to police tonight? Off the scale.
I'm Dan Whitehead, Sky News' West of England and Wales correspondent.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live. I'm live in Jerusalem.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Over the next 45 days, an estimate 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. We take you to the heart of the story in the largest democracy in the world.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
I'm Cordelia Lynch, Sky's Asia correspondent based here in Bangkok.
We've been undercover inside Asia's huge network of scam centres.
This compound is, without a doubt, the worst. It is essentially hell on earth.
We cover a vast, varied and dynamic region that's shaping the rest of the world.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone could say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
So the breaking news is that the US National Tsunami Center has said a tsunami warning has been issued after a 7.2 magnitude earthquake struck the Alaskan Peninsula. Getting more from the German Research Center for Geosciences, it was at a depth of 10 kilometres, 6.2 miles. The US Tsunami Warning System issued that warning for portions of Alaska following that earthquake. So a magnitude 7.2 earthquake and a tsunami alert. Now, a British extreme athlete is attempting to become the first person to swim the 1,000-mile circumference of Iceland. Ross Edgley told Sky News that his daily 18-mile battle against the elements required him to gain 10 kilos, so the extra fat acts like seal blubber. Here's how the man, inspired by the Norse god Thor, described the challenge.
We've got chafing in places that you basically just don't want to chafe. I actually want to use this opportunity to really sort of combat some of the bad PR that orcas might have. I'm attempting to become the first person to swim 1,000 miles around the entire coast of Iceland. We are swimming for hours a day, and your mind goes to some strange places as well, because you're swimming in this world of sensory deprivation. You can't really see much, can't hear anything. So you think about some weird things, but mainly at the moment, I'm thinking about Icelandic licorice. It sounds really weird. It's amazing. It's kind of like a local dish. And I actually want to use this opportunity to really sort of combat some of the bad PR that orcas might have, just because there's never been a verified case of an orca attacking a human in the wild. It just doesn't exist. And we've seen a lot. You know, pods have come by, they've checked me out, wondered what the strange Englishman was doing in the Icelandic waters, and then we went our separate ways. Biggest challenge so far has just been the salt water. So basically the human body is not meant to exist in salt water for that long. So you get something called salt tongue. My tongue was basically falling off. We had just taken off chunks of it. That was really, really bad. It just gets dehydrated, all the moisture gets extracted from it. Fortunately, we found a solution. So coconut oil kind of lubes up and moisturizes the tongue. But now we've got chafing in places that you basically just don't want to chafe. I've just been trying to put as much fat on as possible. So I put on about 10 kilos of just pure fat. Basically, body fat is insulating. It's almost like seal blubber or whale blubber. You want it. So it sounds really kind of contradictory, but for this, I want to be as fat as possible and fit as possible. I just want to be kind of like whale-like. It's amazing to have so many people following this swim, but I actually say do not follow my lifestyle. I don't recommend my lifestyle to anyone, quite frankly. But I think the whole purpose of this swim is basically just to get people to shift their personal barometer of what they think is possible. Not to follow what I do, but basically just to think, you know, if Ross can swim around Iceland, maybe I can do my first ultra marathon and my first triathlon.